Hi there, my name is Brett Schultz. 2 days ago, I tested positive for Corona or COVID-19. A lot of people have been asking me questions about my experience. There's so much unknown surrounding this whole thing. I wanted to answer those questions on a more public platform and make this video so that I can put some people at ease, but also raise awareness of how serious this whole thing is and what we can be doing to squash it as quickly as possible. Now, I want to say I am not a medical professional. I'm probably the farthest thing from it. So everything I'm about to say is based on my personal experience and what has been told to me by medical professionals. With that, a lot of people still do not know what's going on, even in the medical field. As I was on the phone with countless people trying to understand how to quarantine myself properly, how I should move forward, I even got conflicting answers at times. I just want to share what I know so that I can help people out as much as possible. So I live in New York City, I live in Brooklyn, and I flew down to Nashville, Tennessee for a friend's wedding. That was on Thursday of last week. And on Friday, I started developing what felt like flu-like symptoms. Felt really warm and felt a little bit achy. Eventually, my friend encouraged me, hey, you just flew from New York, you should probably go to the ER and get this tested. I went to the ER. As soon as I got there, they put, a mask on me. They shoved me into the corner away from everyone. They took my temperature. I had a temperature of 101.5. I was still feeling a little bit achy, a little fevery, but ultimately not terrible. The doctor encouraged me that if this is corona, you're not going to be feeling much worse than you are right now, which proved to be true. My symptoms lasted for about 32 hours, but then after that I felt fine. Even by the time I left the hospital, about 3.5 hours later, my temperature had already dropped to 99.5, and I don't believe it ever got up above that. I believe that if I didn't have symptoms, they probably wouldn't have tested me for corona, but because I had a temperature, because I had aches, and especially because I had just flown in from New York, they thought we better test this guy. The corona test specifically, they swabbed the back of my nostrils, so they went up my nose with some swabs, which was not fun, and then they swabbed the back of my throat, and then they took some blood tests as well, and then they sent me home. They said, isolate yourself for the next 2 days. You'll hear an answer within 1 to 2 days as to whether the test comes back positive or negative for corona. 2 days later, I got a call from the hospital. Now, it's actually insane. They originally called me and told me my test was negative, and then 20 minutes later called back and said, hey, so sorry, we made a mistake. Your test is actually positive, you have corona. My jaw has never hit the floor faster, but as is life. They told me you need to quarantine yourself for 2 weeks. The difficult part of this was I live in New York and I was just visiting Nashville. I want to add that I do feel it was a mistake for me to fly out of New York this past Thursday. I give myself a little grace in the fact that Thursday is the day a lot of this stuff got taken way more seriously through the media. But at the same time, getting on a plane right now is the easiest way to spread germs and to spread this virus. I wish I would not have traveled, and if you do have travel plans coming up, especially via plane, I would encourage you to postpone those unless absolutely necessary. So now I'm in Nashville and I have to find a place to quarantine myself for 2 weeks. This was the really emotionally draining part of this experience for me because I was on the phone for literally 2 days straight trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I do have good friends in Nashville. We didn't want to spread this thing to more people than necessary, so really I needed to find a place alone. The hotels we called said that no hotel would take anyone who tested positive for corona, and I couldn't find a place that was just a lone house with no one in it where I could stay. And because there's not much set up in place right now, the CDC was not responsible for finding me a place to quarantine myself. I had many people telling me that the CDC was responsible for this. According to them, they were not responsible. I couldn't admit myself into the hospital for 2 weeks because I didn't need it. So I had to find a way to quarantine myself. So the option became to get a rental car and drive back to New York and isolate myself in my room in my apartment in Brooklyn. Obviously, this is not a great solution because I would have had to stop for gas, stop for food. I would have had to go back to my roommates in New York and then infect them if they're not, already infected. Through connection, I ended up actually finding an Airbnb in Nashville that gave me a huge discount and said they would let me stay here for 2 weeks, even though I was positive with corona. So that's where I am now and feeling good. The people I was with, many of them were told that they should isolate themselves for 2 weeks as well, just to confirm that they're not going to show any symptoms. The thing with corona is you don't necessarily show symptoms, right away, you could have it in you and you could even be contagious before the symptoms show up. I want to dig in a little more regarding my symptoms. Like I said, I felt no more than just flu-like symptoms: fever, sweating, chills, aches. Those symptoms only lasted about 32 hours, and it didn't get worse than having a fever of 101.5. I am 26 years old, I'm really healthy, and that's a huge contributing factor to why I didn't feel any more than I did. I also didn't feel any respiratory issues. I didn't have shortness of breath, coughing, which I have heard people experience. A lot of that may be due to the fact that, like I said, my age, and I'm also a runner, so my lungs are pretty used to working pretty hard. I don't know if that's a contributing factor, but it's nothing I experienced. Today I did yoga. I am feeling totally energized. I woke up with a little bit of a sore throat, but that could be due to the fact that I haven't slept in ventilated heating in a while, so it could just be that. To put some people at ease, people my age, people that are young and fairly healthy, there really is little risk for us. The doctor told me that I had less than 0.5% chance of not recovering. What we do need to worry about is people who are at higher risk from not recovering. And those people are the elderly, people who are pregnant, people with pre-existing conditions, and infants. The pre-existing conditions is something that I was worried about because I'm a cancer survivor. I had Burkitt's lymphoma cancer when I was 12 years old, and I went through chemotherapy. The doctor assured me that that was so long ago that that wouldn't have any effect on my experience now. People that are young and healthy are really in a fine spot. The issue is the spreading to these people that do have pre-existing conditions or are older. What people our age do need to be doing right now is just taking a pause, isolating themselves. You may have the virus without even knowing it. You don't want to be responsible for passing that on to one person who might pass it on to 2 people, who passes it on to 10 people. Isolate yourself as much as possible. And if you can't, stay out of large groups. In addition, we also don't want this to be more of an issue in our future than it has to be. It does seem like Corona is going to be around, but I think that we can limit the amount that it is part of our world by taking 2 weeks now to take a break from our lives, to stay home, so it spreads as little as possible and we don't have to deal with it as much in the future. We started by saying wash your hands and drink plenty of water. That was not enough. The next step is to stop going out in big groups and to just stay home. We want to squash this thing as quickly as possible. If you have more questions, I'm gonna post this on YouTube, probably my Instagram as well, so please comment. I'm an extrovert and I'm gonna be alone in this house for 2 weeks. I would love to talk to you and raise more awareness about what this thing is and how we can end it as quickly as possible. Much love, thanks for watching, peace.